Now we will listen to Matthew Ehret's testimony.
Introduction for a lot of people. It's a figure who, in many ways, was the godfather of the modern Green New Deal, where we have this shadow of a shadow who's been, imposed onto the people to carry out a policy that really doesn't come from him. And I think everybody recognizes that.
On April 14th, 2022, SuperSpreaders is proud to announce we will be interviewing Matthew Ehret of the Canadian Patriot Press. Matthew's knowledge of world history is unparalleled. He's been interviewed almost daily on truth-seeking shows, podcasts, and channels all over the internet. We're privileged to be having him on. SuperSpreaders is producing this series of primers for those who might not yet have been exposed to Matthew Ehret's erudite knowledge. Today's primer comes from an article by Matthew Ehret, link in the description below. Today's subject, eugenics. Already we can clearly see two opposing patterns that have taken form, illustrated in the remarks recently made by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who said,
"I fear our world is creeping towards two different sets of economic, trade, financial, and technology rules, two divergent approaches in the development of artificial intelligence, and ultimately two different military and geopolitical strategies. This is a recipe for trouble. It would be far less predictable and far more dangerous than the Cold War."
Guterres is speaking of two divergent paradigms. On the one hand, there is the ideology that Guterres himself devoutly supports, which has taken on the title in recent years of the Davos Agenda, or the Great Reset. On the other hand, is a system that asserts the right of sovereign nations to continue as the only legitimate basis for international law and scientific progress to be the basis of economic ideology. The terms of the new system were recently re-emphasized throughout the 5,000-word Russia-China joint statement on the terms of the new era now emerging. From where did the dystopic world order of the Davos crowd emerge? It might surprise you, but to answer that question we will need to jump back nearly 1 century and meet an aging misanthropic social engineer named Herbert George Wells, who wrote a 1928 opus called The Open Conspiracy, Blueprint for a World Revolution, calling for world government and depopulation, saying,
"The open conspiracy rests upon a disrespect for nationality, and there is no reason why it should tolerate noxious or obstructive governments because they hold their own in this or that patch of human territory."
Wells was a member of an organization called the Fabian Society, which itself was established in 1884 by a coterie of British eugenicists and Malthusians in order to promote a new social order designed to mold society into a new mechanized order run by a managerial elite of social scientists from above. Throughout the 20th century, the Fabian Society would penetrate all branches of government, military, academia, media, and even private corporate boards around the world, creating global systems of fifth columns operating within cells, hierarchically unified by a central command within the highest echelons of British intelligence. From below, plebs and laborers would be attracted by words promoted by Fabians like equality, social justice, and redistribution of wealth, utilizing Marxist terms while never realizing that those words were just a sweet illusion with no claim to reality. H.G. Wells was explicit in his many works of non-fiction, writing in 1904,
"The way of nature has always been to slay the hindmost, and there is still no other way unless we can prevent those who would become the hindmost being born. It is in the sterilization of failure and not in the selection of success for breeding that the possibility of an improvement of the human stock lies."
Wells always infused Trojan horses into his narratives that he knew would have lasting value on conditioning the broader zeitgeist. These were simply, 1. Human nature was intrinsically absurd, selfish, and incapable of resolving the duty-freedom paradox in any believable manner. 2. Science and technology would thus always be used towards selfish and destructive ends. 3. World government is the only salvation for humanity.
The social psychologists of the future will have a number of classes of school children on whom they will try different methods of producing an unshakable conviction that snow is black. It is for future scientists to make these maxims precise and discover exactly how much it costs per head to make children believe that snow is black, and how much less it would cost to make them believe it is dark gray.
Russell's dystopic vision was paralleled by his friend Sir Julian Huxley, brother of Aldous Huxley, founder of the United Nations Education, Science and Cultural Organization in 1946, who said,
"The moral for UNESCO is clear. The task laid upon it of promoting peace and security can never be wholly realized through the means assigned to it, education, science, and culture. It must envision some form of world political unity, whether through a single world government or otherwise, as the only certain means of avoiding war. In its educational program, it can stress the ultimate need for a world political unity and familiarize all peoples with the implications of the transfer of full sovereignty from separate nations to a world organization."
To what end would this world political unity be aimed? Several pages later, Huxley's vision is laid out in all of its twisted detail.
At the moment, it is probable that the indirect effect of civilization is dysgenic instead of eugenic, and in any case, it seems likely that the dead weight of genetic stupidity, physical weakness, mental instability, and disease proneness, which already exist in the human species, will prove too great a burden for real progress to be achieved. Thus, even though it is quite true that any radical eugenic policy will be for many years politically and psychologically impossible, it will be important for UNESCO to see that the eugenic problem is examined with the greatest care and that the public mind is informed of the issues at stake so that much that is now unthinkable may at least become thinkable.
Came from the simplistic theories of a British East India Company economist who taught at the British Empire's Haileybury College, training generations of imperial economists, Thomas Malthus. And he observed that people grow geometrically on average, while food production only grows arithmetically, and thus social engineers can forecast using mathematical formulas where you will have a population crisis, and then act preemptively, as Malthus even describes in gut-wrenching detail in his 1799 essays on the principle of population, to encourage the death of the useless, of the poor, even babies who are deemed unfit.
And this is just the beginning. All of these people tie in together through the Fabian Society, Thomas Malthus, Darwin.
Charles Darwin, in his autobiography, people wonder, where does this theory of natural selection come from? That was then applied by the eugenicists on a social scale, the thing that described the fossil records and the flow of life.
The Club of Rome, the World Wildlife Fund of all things. Members of these groups feel they are genetically superior to us, the common man, and only they are worthy of rule. They want a much smaller world population that feels that they are under constant threat from war, climate change, pandemic.
It's a figure who, in many ways, was the godfather of the modern Green New Deal, the thing that is behind or integrated with the Agenda 2030, the Farm to Fork program to try to bring in a Monsanto GMO program for Europe as part of a decarbonization strategy, which is also tied to a variety of other insane policies. When you actually look at a lot of what these governments of the transatlantic are being told they have to do in order to decarbonize, according to these computer models that say we simply must do this by 2030 or 2050 in order to save nature, you're like, well, the effect will be massive death.
Only approved experts can be trusted by the populace and given the public mouthpiece. Technical experts drive government policy in a technocracy. The eugenicists see us as nothing more than human animals facing the exact same pressures as any other animal. Ehret points out that nothing in Malthusian thought accounts for human ingenuity and black swan-style advancement in technology such as electricity, television, the internet, nuclear power, etc. To find out more details on who these eugenicists are and what they have planned for us, tune into SuperSpreaders, 9 p.m. EST, April 14th, where we'll have Matthew Ehret on himself, and we can ask him all of our questions. Don't miss it. Like and subscribe. We'll see you there.